Hello, and welcome to my corner of the universe. Today is the 16th of June, and it's Father's Day here in the UK. So, today, a little story about my dad, Wally. My dad was born into a fairly affluent family who ran a funeral home. His mom was a bit musical, and I'm told she had a really lovely singing voice, but unfortunately she died when he was very young. Wally was musical also, and had piano lessons as he was growing up. By the time he was in high school, he was playing Rachmaninoff preludes and playing them well. He had the hands for it. It was an easy spread of wider than an octave, probably an octave and a third. But sadly, he gave up playing, and I don't know how much music he remembered. He never showed me that he could remember or could play off score ever, I think. But he did have a bit of a prelude in his hands that he could remember, and he would frequently play "Be Still My Soul," which was anyway. Those were the only two things that he could really remember anything of. That I never understood why he gave it up, but life happens, I guess. My grandfather, who was called Gottlieb, but his friends called him Newt. I'm not sure that was any much of an improvement, but he enjoyed motor racing and golf. And golf has always been a part of the family. My brother golfs. I have a number of uncles who golfed, and Wally loved his golfing. Mm-hmm. He would frequently go out on a Sunday to go golfing. And he'd be very happy, I think, that my new address includes the words "the green," which is great. Wally was a good golfer, and he even had a hole-in-one at one point. I think he might have had two, but he had one, and it was the last day of the season, and all of his friends or at the club or wherever they were had put in a certain amount of money that whoever got a hole-in-one would get this cash. And it was the final day, and Wally won it. He was really chuffed about that. It was the hope of his family that eventually he and his brother would take over the family business, the funeral home. But he never talked about what his hopes and dreams were, if he had any beyond that or before that. I think it was just always assumed that that was what he was going to do. But when he was in high school, his father died suddenly. I think he was about 60. I think he died at 60. And Wally always had a kind of not a premonition, but a kind of a mini fear about dying at the same age, which he did surpass that, not by many years, but he did survive longer than my grandfather. In fact, for his 60th birthday, sort of gallows humor, they made him a tombstone cake. But I think you did see the humor in it. But, just as a small reminder, and being Father's Day, you kind of think back through all of those things about your family and how you grew up. I think about that more at the moment, probably because I'm getting older as well. But there were several things that I do remember really fondly about my dad. I don't know if it's a memory. There was a picture, but I have in the back of my mind that I remember this happening, that my parents had a thing about Christmas Eve and decorating for Christmas. My mom liked to decorate a lot. That's another story for another time. But we would go to church on Christmas Eve, come home, put on our brand new jammies so that would be ready, picture ready in the morning. And nothing was decorated in the house that night. It was always a magic moment surprise in the morning, always. And I can remember, or I can feel, that my dad would carry me down the stairs to Christmas. And I can remember the house on Adelaide where that happened. I can see it in my mind. I can feel the hug. And that is one of my fondest memories of growing up. He had a lovely tradition where he always got me tea roses, a little bowl of tea roses for my birthday. And there would be the number of tea roses that how old I was. And he did this up until the time, just till I turned 30. And that would have been in the first year of our marriage. And I was living here then. And he forgot to mention the word tea when he ordered the roses. So I got an opera basket of 30 brilliantly pink, huge opera basket of roses from my dad for my birthday. It was the last time that he did that. I think it cost them a small fortune just to do that. And he said that now that I was married, that my husband could do that for me. I remember him when there were, I think, some of the cars for the funeral home, and they had Cadillacs, had phones in them. And he and his friend John, I think Dad had a fake, just a hand receiver in the car that he could just be funny with. But I think he and John both did that. I could be wrong about that. But the thing that they did do is they both liked the same alcoholic beverage. So every Christmas they would exchange a bottle of this beverage. So it was the same beverage, they just exchanged bottles. And they were both very happy with what they got. John and Dad were really, really good friends. And we spent a lot of time up at the cottage on one of the small lakes in Michigan with them, family. And that's where he died, basically. He and another couple and were there, and one of the other couples was a doctor, and so he had the best care possible, but it just was to no avail. I was living here at the time, and it was funny. On that day, Chris and I had gone out for a pub lunch, a Sunday pub lunch, and I was home. I was on tour at the time, but I had a few days hiatus between from that part of the tour to the next part of the tour. And we saw this sports car with this guy with a mustache and a little cap, and he looked so much like Dad, and we both just remarked on it. And when we got home, we got the call that he was dying. But I don't want to end on things that are just, it's important, but it's not the whole bit. I remember things like the very first time that I bought a new car, and it was a newer Mustang, and it looked quite sporty. And he bought me the most wonderful pair of red leather driving gloves. I remember mostly is that just before I walked down the aisle to get married, is that we had a mini chat. He held my hand, he squeezed it, and It was a good moment. Oh, I don't know. He wasn't perfect. No one is. But he was a man who cared and made the lives of others who had to go through the same pain of death of a loved one much easier. Funerals are different in the States than in the UK, and the wake is held at a funeral home. And the evening or the afternoon and evening that Wally had his wake, we had so many members of our own family and friends there. But we also had several hundred people show up to pay their respects, to say thank you to the way he handled their times. Anyway, before I get too maudlin, good memories, Wally.